about to start up here. My name is Tim Wright. I am the designer and creator of the website GnosticTarotCards.com, which you see in front of you. Now, I know on some of the YouTube videos we've gone over these things, but I wanted to get a little bit more advanced. We have our astrology here. If you go to the web page, you have a tarot line out with some meditational aspects of tarot, but also you'll have a place you can go to over here, which is a Kabbalistic tree of life. And this is what I wanted to talk about tonight. It is a pleasure to be able to speak about these things, which I've been instructed pretty well in. And feel free to leave a message on Twitter, Gnostic Tarot, or on Facebook. You can find us in those areas, so that's definitely something that can be done. So if you go to this webpage, GnosticTarotCards.com, and you click on one of these three areas of the banner, it is a navigational place where you can go right to the section that you're thinking about. So if you click on the Kabbalah tree, you'll see that the tree comes up for you, but this is not the tree that most people are familiar with. As you'll be able to see right off the bat, there is a hay right here in the path where you'll normally see an aleph. So this is very different. And this is the reason why I wanted to present this information, because it's not so well known as you may know. This tree has taken many forms and changes through the time it's been presented, but it's never been shown in this scope pretty much in public. So I wanted to go ahead and show everyone that. And that's pretty much the purpose of this video. We might go a little bit into Kabbalah and Tarot as one, but mainly into Kabbalah itself. So you see, right here we have the three mother letters. This is the Aleph, the Mem, and the Shen. Okay? Then we have 7 double letters. Which you can see here are the vertical bars connecting each path on the tree to a Sephiroth. Then we have 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 diagonal lines, which are your zodiacal references. So you have your 3 elementals, your 7 doubles, and your 12 planetary astrological zodiacal representations. And these are known as the elemental letters, so I just wanted to let you know. And this is mainly discussed in Arya Kaplan's Sefer Yetzirah, although it's everywhere, which I'll show you. Primarily, this information can be found in Arya Kaplan's Sefer Yetzirah. It's important because this tree is known as the Gra, G-R-A tree. And it's very important. Not only geometrically is this tree important, but also the tree is important because this was the agreed upon order out of a council of Kabbalistic rabbis who came up with, you know what, this is the way that Kabbalah is supposed to be taught. So the Gra tree is actually by the Gra Commission, which you can read in this book. I'm sure everyone who is an occultist has it, but it's by Isaac Sadia. The Gra tree is actually by Rabbi Isaac Sadia. And I could have said that wrong because I'm not Jewish, as you know. Now, this is specifically Jewish Kabbalah. You are not going to go much into the realm of the Greek and Hellenistic Kabbalah, which is very important to know. All of these Kabbalistic threads are lying through a particular way of teaching of one or the other way. So this is pretty much Gra-based Kabbalah. If you want to use the Gra system, which one of my favorite tarot decks, the El Gran Tarot Esoterico, it uses the Gra system on its representations through the Hebrew letters that you'll see on the actual El Gran Tarot Esoterico. You see right there. So that is the moon, and that is, I believe, Ayin. That is the path of Ayin, which, as you'll see back on GnosticTarotCards.com, the path of Ayin connects Yesod, right, and Hod. Those are super important representations. I can't stress that enough. And there's a reason behind it, but I won't be able to go into all of it because this can't be an hour upon hour lecture on Kabbalah. But I may do more videos on that. But this is the connection between Hod and Yesod. Those represent a specific level of Kabbalistic understanding. I'm doing these lines on purpose. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 layers of what can easily be grafted over into Theosophical Kabbalah as far as the Theosophy of the 19th, 18th, 19th century of not only Blavatsky, but Bailey and Roerich. But also, this subtle body system is easily graftable onto the work of Torquem Serdarian, which one of his best books is Psyche and Psychism. It's a 2-volume set, but it goes through in-depth information on the 7 layers of the subtle bodies and the 7 sub-bodies of the subtle bodies. So, very important. I highly recommend it because this is information that is absolutely necessary to do anything with Kabbalah. I mean, sure, you can memorize a bunch of letters and alphabetical correspondences and maybe even use a tarot and get an idea of what card you're trying to get a representation of. But to be able to make these kinds of connections between the Yesod and the whole Netzach area, not Netzach area, you'll need to have an understanding of how these different Kabbalistic structures layer on each other and what we're exactly talking about. Where, meaning what the tradition is talking about when they're referencing these different layers of spiritual interpretation. So this is the Gra tree. It is highly known through the Arya Kaplan book. It's also part of the Safed Kabbalistic schools that you'll read about in a lot of Kaplan's literature. So that was what the Berhir was pretty much based on, was these schools of Kabbalistic understanding. But there's others, and this is the reason why I wanted to have this video, is because they're not well known or talked about. So you got Kabbalah and Tarot. The Tarot has been associated with the Kabbalah prior to Levi, but definitely Eliphas Levi, Alphonse Castant, was one of the first publicizers of the Tarot and Kabbalah, because the Tarot are a set of flashcards or a set of little cards that you can use for your memory to understand these gigantic structures and volumes of Kabbalistic knowledge. So Kabbalah has a few main branches. That's very important to know. There's the Theosophical and there's the Alphabetical. The Theosophical is mainly the Lurianic Kabbalah. Isaac Luria was pretty much a theosophist in the sense of Jacob Boehme and some of the other Theosophists throughout history. There's a lot of Gnosticism in Lurianic Kabbalah, but basically we're looking at Kabbalah here. So you have a Theosophical sense behind it, meaning it's going to give you a representation that's not so much about the letters themselves and how they represent, but these subtle layers of understanding. You're going to have stuff about the vessel. They talk about the simsum, where the energy comes in. There's a restriction, on and on and on. And there's right now on Amazon, there's 12 volumes in English for you that don't read Hebrew, and I don't read it either. So there's 12 volumes in English that have been translated. Some say piss poor, but it's translated, of Isaac Luria's work by Chaim Vital. And that is definitely something. If you're interested in Jewish Kabbalah, go there. The other is a alphabetical Kabbalah. Mainly, it's called the Prophetic branch. Now, the Prophetic branch is pretty much represented by Abraham Abulafia. Abulafia was a rabbi in the 12th and 13th century in Spain, and a lot of Kabbalah comes from Abulafian sources. Now, there's many different branches. We could go into all the different areas that Kabbalah was taught, but I wanted to bring up the Prophetic Kabbalah because Prophetic Kabbalah is saying you don't need to have any theosophical knowledge. By doing specific practices, which you can go on Amazon and purchase a book by Rabbi Yehuda Abotini called The Ladder of Ascent, or Sulam Aliyah. It's the ladder of enlightenment, pretty much, for Kabbalistic understanding in the prophetic school. It teaches you how to do what Abulafia was doing. Abulafia had a way of working with Kabbalistic structures, which we may go a little bit over, but not much, that was kind of theurgical. He had a magical, mystical way of approaching the names in Jewish Kabbalistic lore and history. So what he would do is he would permute these letters, because every letter in Jewish Kabbalistic understanding is also a number. And just regular Hebrew, numbers and letters have a value, and they correspond to each other in Hebrew. And so this is where this idea of Gematria, Tamura, Nordicoion, all that came from, was working with the mathematical principles that are embedded in these letters. Not only the mathematical principles, but the theosophical, and as you'll start to get in Abulafian Kabbalah, the theurgic principles. Now, this is where a lot of the Rosicrucian and occult Kabbalah come from. I call it the Rosicrucian occult Kabbalah because it's not necessarily anything related to Jewish Kabbalah, but it's not detached from that either. Mainly this is from the author Reuchlin, was pretty much the father of Christian Kabbalah. And Moshe Idel says that it pretty much comes from Abulafia and the Spanish prophetic Kabbalah, but we won't go there. I'm just saying that there is a form of Rosicrucian or German English Kabbalah that you'll start to get through the lines of Reuchlin, the Mira Verbo. I got a text. So the Mira Verbo, I think it's called, and then also the Gates of Light, which were translated by Reuchlin. So there's a lot of information there. I'm not going to go into all of it because it's massive. But there is information out there that you can go into that. Now, the occult Kabbalah kind of goes into that line where you're doing a form of magical, mystical practice with the letters, but you're doing a form of yoga. That's why I called it Rosicrucian Occult, because the letters and the yogic system that you're doing is allowing your body, not just your mind or your heart, but your body starts to take in an understanding of these Kabbalistic structures. There's an Egyptian Kabbalah that many aren't very aware of, but that was represented in the teachings of Stylian. I don't really know how to say his name perfectly. Stylianos Atisheles, or as he's affectionately known, Daskalos. And here you see me going through my library to find the Daskalos folder. Here we go. Daskalos. I got lots and lots of books, lots of information. But what I wanted to show you was what Daskalos was called the symbol of life. Now, Daskalos worked with a Kabbalah that was not the Etz Chaim. It was not the tree of life that you're seeing in Jewish Kabbalah. It was not prompted by Reuchlin and a lot of the English Rosicrucian Kabbalah. What Daskalos was working with was a form of pretty much theurgical, magical, priestly work with the tree of life as a symbolic glyph. Now, we have a bunch of these lectures, but this is a picture that Daskalos painted of the tree of life. On it, you'll see you have the higher upper triad of the Keter, Chokmah, and Bina, and you have Tiferet here, you have Hesed and Gevurah, and then you also have Nitzak and Hod, you have Yesod, and then Malkut. Now, all of these paths are a little bit different because this is an Egyptian form of using the Kabbalistic structures, where some, like Daskalos, believe the Jewish form of working within these structures came from. But this is a very Rosicrucian form of Kabbalah. So this book is kind of costly, but it's The Symbol of Life by Daskalos, as he's affectionately known. And I also have some audio lectures on that too. So you have a Greek Kabbalah. Now, the Greek Kabbalah is it's hidden because it's not so spherical as we saw in the Egyptian Kabbalah or the Theosophical Kabbalah, or even the Kabbalah of the Safed school, where we're getting into the Gematria. The Greek or Hellenistic Kabbalah is highly represented by Pythagorean and geometrical ways of perceiving relationships that are Kabbalistic. So you have a Greek Kabbalah, which I don't have the book in front of me this moment, but the canon is about Greek Kabbalah, and it's highly about this number relationship of the Kabbalah and the numerical way of working with these Pythagorean structures. And that's all throughout the propositions of Euclid in the elements. In fact, as you've probably heard before, what's commonly known as the Platonic solids were actually known as the Pythagorean solids. So that's why this is so important, because the Pythagorean solids were like the Sephirot for the Jews and for the spheres in the Egyptian Kabbalah. They were forms that you could cast in higher order thinking and higher principles of relation, such as number and geometry. Last, we have the Arabic Kabbalah. Now, a lot of people aren't very familiar about Arabic Sufism and the Kabbalistic structures that come through that. There were a group of teachings, there's a book out there called Words of Power, that were gathered together in a Masonic-like way that taught the Arabic branch of Kabbalah as far as the numerical structure behind what the Theosophy of Arabic Kabbalah is. This is very, very important because you're going to see that Arabic Kabbalah is highly represented by the Jew Maimonides. I'll go ahead and get those books out. The Guide of the Perplexed. Maimonides was a teacher in Kabbalah, but Maimonides wasn't just like a Jewish lawgiver like a lot of people say he was. What Maimonides did is he adapted this Arabic strand into, which comes from Aristotelian philosophy and a lot of stuff like that. He adapted it into the common cultural way of education and understanding for a lot of the Arabic students that were able to start studying Jewish mysticism. So this is highly recommended. This is Shlomo Pine's version of the Guide to the Perplexed. There's a reason why I'm talking about this. As we saw in the Alphabetical or Prophetic Kabbalah, Abulafia was the prime exponent of Prophetic Kabbalah. Abulafia actually taught during his first years the Maimonidean system of Kabbalistic understanding. What Abulafia came to was that there were two main branches of Kabbalistic understanding. There was the work of the creation, which had to do a lot with the Sefer Yetzirah and the structures behind the creation or emanation in Lurianic Kabbalah of the universe. And there was also the work of the chariot, which was popularized by the Ezekiel books, where you start to see throne mysticism and the Merkabah system of using Kabbalah. Those were the two main branches. You have the work of the creation and the work of the chariot. Now, Abulafia went through a lot of this in his books. I think he wrote like 20 to 25 books. And I have them all, but I'm not going to go over all of them. Mainly, they're super complex. A couple of them, though, the Gates of Eden, are actually commentaries on the work of the creation, on the Sefer Yetzirah. And that's where it's important to start grasping the fact that all of this is interrelated. It's not broken off into one area that is wholly unique unto one area of Kabbalah. When you're talking about Kabbalah, you're talking about this entire spectrum of Kabbalistic understanding. For those just joining us, we went through the different forms of Kabbalah throughout history. And we're also on GnosticTarotCards.com taking a look at the Tree of Life, the Gra Tree, and the Sephirot correspondences with the paths as they go through the 3, the 7, and the 12 formations of the Hebrew letter system. Now there's way more to be talked about regarding all of these branches, but this is a quick overview so you'll be able to classify any work that you're coming across that kind of buzzwords to you Kabbalah. There's not very many other areas that can be spoken about that won't start to Venn diagram over into one or many of these areas. You'll have a Theosophic way of understanding how Kabbalah teachings work. You'll have an understanding how their core bones work in the structure of the alphabetic, astrological, and even alchemical representations. So it'll start to make a lot more sense as we pop through and look at these areas of Kabbalistic understanding. I could definitely do more classes on this. We could go into many ways that this has been represented and also misrepresented through history, but you're hearing it on Gnostic Tarot cards because I just want to let anybody know who's struggling maybe in one isolated system, thinking that there's no other way to work Kabbalah and there's no other understanding of Kabbalah except this particular way, maybe way, squared or something. If that's the only introduction you have of Kabbalah, then your entire understanding will have to conform to that and that systemic structure. Your taxonomy won't really be able to break out and look at the Arabic, the Rosicrucian, the Occult, the Theosophic, the Lurianic, the Prophetic, Kabbalah, as a system that is not exclusive to each other, but inclusive. When you start mixing the Greek with the Jewish, which a lot of people didn't want to do, and also mixing the Greek with the Egyptian, which is exactly what Daskalos was doing. Daskalos was teaching a form of priestly mysticism with Egyptian Kabbalah, but he pulled it out of the Grecian system, the Hellenistic system of Gnosis that was known through the Cyprian islands in Greece. He pulled this out of the order of Melchizedek, and a lot of the information that he presented came directly from this overlap, which is the reason why I went here. They were called the Pednosovs. They were mystics that were also versed very highly in geometry and Pythagorean-based systems. They were able to hop, skip, and jump between them. They didn't just say, no, ours is the Tetractys and there is no other. They were able to go beyond that either-or approach into a and inclusive approach. That was the main reason for showing all of this gamut of information through 400 or 500 years and beyond. There's more and more. We have Brody's book on the songs of songs and how a lot of the representations that were given in the Songs of Songs were Kabbalistic. But people didn't understand it unless they were initiated into this lexicon of understanding the language that was being used. So he says stuff like, when there's a flower, of course all of you Zohar scholars know that when there was a lily mentioned, they weren't talking about just a lily on earth in a garden. They were giving a certain theosophic structure that could be represented through the mirror of the presence of a lily. This goes a little bit to Eastern and Buddhist, but that all of this high theoretical system was available in the practical, earthbound work of shamanism. And that's what we're doing here. We're connecting the theoretical, I'm not going to do anything but think with this side of my brain, and the practical of the shamanistic approach, and we're saying they are not exclusive, they are married together. You can do your neo-pagan rituals and you can light off your incense. I got a diffuser right over there. But also, you're not going to throw away all of the intellectual information that's been given to you about these systems. That just as much as is a mystery inside of the mushroom, so the understanding of how the mushroom came to be is a mystery as well. So this is where Abulafia was working with the work of creation and the work of the chariot. So that's a lot of what I wanted to say. We were able to go through all the branches of Kabbalah and how they pop up through history. Of course, different branches were highlighted to the exclusion of others in many mystical societies. And this isn't always this way and never no other way, but highly in the Rosicrucian and Occult world, you'll see Kabbalah presented one way, and it can never be any other way, and it's always been that way, and it's been that way since the beginning of time. Well, history shows us that that's not necessarily true. When the Illuminati, which is the Hebrew word for the actual tree of life diagrams, were shown, there was nowhere until the Ari, which, or no, not the Ari, until the Gra, Isaac Sadia, who was, I mean, these are a lot of things to remember. So, Isaac Sadia, the Gra Commission, said, no, throughout history, we've had a presentation of the Illuminati like this. I consulted Dr. Hayes, who's the main iconographic scholar of Jewish mysticism, and he said to me that there was pretty much no other letter correspondence to the Tree of Life than the one that was shown on the Gra. There certainly wasn't many variants from what you're seeing on GnosticTarotCards.com. So I'll be kind enough just to put it that way, because there are variants, but they were never in the way that they're depicted in modern Rosicrucian and Occult Kabbalah. Never has Jewish history seen a diagram that was like that. So maybe that came from Rosicrucian, Reuchlin Kabbalah, maybe not. I know that Boma represented, you know, his Hebrew mystic characters a certain way too, as you'll be able to see in Christine Payne Towler's book, Foundations of Esoteric Tarot, which I'm going to get for you in a second. I just had to find it. You'll see that Boma, and I have a picture here from Boma's clock, Boma did not see the Kabbalah in a way that a lot of people see it. Now, if you're seeing it at the 1 and the A and the top where the clock is, then you saw it correctly. The 1 and the A line up to the top, to the Keter. So it's really important to understand that this isn't just one way and not the other way. I'm trying to share the middle ground of all Kabbalistic structures for a reason. But it's never not the other way too. It's never one thing. It's all things. That's what we're looking at in Kabbalah. We're looking at the structure and the blueprint of creation, not only ideologically, but metaphysically, quantum, on and on and on, to all the different structures of reality that can be grafted on it. The Kabbalah can hold that. But only when it's available to be an inclusive system. That's the importance of even being able to use the Kabbalah and this little diagram of memory to even be able to use it theurgically. You can't use this stuff theurgically unless you have been introduced to this scaffolding and now you know what to do. You're introduced to different levels of information. You're said, okay, yeah, you start in the beginning, you can go from the 3 mother letters, the Shin, the Aleph, and the Mem, and what does that mean? It means you're balancing between an oppositional stance. You know, it's super easy. It says, hey, in your head, in your heart, and even in your other areas, your gut, we'll say, and lower in Malkut, you need to realize that there are not just one thing that excludes all the others, that this one thing includes both the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy. Now, you can't always go to just one pillar of severity, because you'll have an experience of going from one psycho-spiritual modality to another. And that's what a lot of this was represented to do, was to give an education, an academy of sorts, to those who were just needing to learn, due to the fact that not a lot of people were literate in the days of Jewish Kabbalah. So Even in the Egyptian Kabbalah, these sciences were not taught to the public. Like now, you can just go onto the site, you can check out a video, you can hear a blabbermouth like me, just kidding, talking, and you'll hear information that was only available from the mouth of an initiate to the ear of a postulate. They were not available widespread in public, mainly because people didn't know what to do with it. They were so busy in their day-to-day life running through the gamut of doing things that they didn't have a lot of time for higher order thinking and philosophizing. Those were the people who weren't doing all the work. So, at any rate, that is a little bit of information about the Kabbalah. I know I talked very fast, very spanning lots and lots of areas on purpose. So if you want to let me know more about what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to talk about, and what you don't want to ever talk about again, come check me out on Gnostic Tarot Cards. Check me out on Twitter. Come and say hi on Facebook. I'm receptive and available for questions. Thanks for coming.